Hello, listeners, and welcome to SMPD, the podcast where we look back at the shows that shaped our childhood. I am Chris Bolton. With me, as always, my partner in podcasting, Mr. Mark Williams.
Hello.
And yeah, that was a slightly less energetic intro than usual. I didn't feel right just coming on and yelling at the screen after probably the most lovely intro in the history of TV. It's Bagpuss this week.
Yeah. Now, I don't know how much of the intro you're going to have used in
I
the
want
clip.
to do it all, but it's like
Well,
2
like
minutes
2.5
long.
fucking minutes.
Yeah, so we can't. We're most likely just going to have the opening chords. We won't hear about Emily and her shop. But look,
Yeah.
I'm sure everybody, I know the intro off by heart, as I'm sure most people listening do. And if you don't, you've probably watched some before watching this show. And if you haven't watched any before and you don't know the intro, then stop listening to us right the fuck now. And treat yourself and then come back. Yeah. But yeah, I would like to play the entire intro and outro, but realistically, that's not going to happen, is it?
No. One, because it's 2.5 fucking minutes long. And two, that's bound to get flagged up somewhere.
Yeah, that's a copyright strike waiting to happen right there. So you'll have probably just heard the opening chords, but even so, it's still nice and serene and gentle. So the last thing you want is hello and welcome to So we spared you that this week, listeners. Anyway, we've now rambled for best part of a minute. Let's dive into Bagpuss. My feelings are clear, I think, just from the words I've just said.
And the fact the motherfucker's behind you as well.
And yeah, I've brought Bagpuss down. He normally lives upstairs in our attic, where Bagpusses should live. You know, they should be in amongst broken things and dusty things, of course. So I've brought him down for the occasion. If it wasn't for the fact I had to precariously balance him on the bookshelf there, he is hanging on for dear life. I was going to open and make him yawn by holding up to the camera, but it would have been incredibly clumsy. And I don't know how many of our audience actually watch on YouTube compared to listen, so all of this may be lost anyway. But for those for those of you listening, there is my I say my Bagpuss. It's actually my wife's Bagpuss. Not mine. I can't claim to have that. However, I did buy it for her, or at least I'm fairly certain I did. And I'm pretty sure I bought it because I wanted it. Anyway.
Fair enough.
Yeah, so, I'm not burying the lead here. Bagpuss is a very, very special show for me. As I've mentioned previously on this podcast as well, this one has been coming for a long time. I've been looking forward to doing this one. I didn't have to go hunting for it to rewatch it. It is a show that I own the complete run of on DVD and have watched many, many times.
It's only a short run. It's only like 13 episodes.
13 episodes. You can watch the whole thing in like 3 hours.
No, they were longer than I thought. I mean, as I said before, we didn't watch BBC kids TV when we were young. We used to watch ITV, so I was aware of Bagpuss and I'd seen bits of it, but I didn't realize how fucking long they are.
Well, the thing is, they're like 15 minutes long,
but you have like 5 minutes of credits.
Yeah, a good 4 to 5 minutes of that is the intro and the outro, which is the same on every episode. So I mean, actually, they're about 10
they're
minutes.
About 10 minutes, yeah. But I mean, I've seen bits over the years, was never really interested. And it's only this afternoon, number 2 had a doctor's appointment. So I was sat in the waiting room watching Bagpuss on my iPad. Again, getting some funny looks, as I do pretty much every fucking time I do this. But yeah, so I was kind of sitting there going, fuck it. And it was only when I watched 3, I think, because that was just about the time I had. And after the first one, I didn't really notice the first one because I was kind of engrossed in the opening anyway. The second one, I was like, fuck me, is this again? Yep. And going through the whole 2.5 minutes again. I think it's 2:40 or something like that. I was like, fuck me, okay. And then the third time, I was like, oh, right, okay, balls to that, scroll.
I mean, yeah.
Once it's enough.
That's the thing with watching it online, I guess. Mine's on DVD. I can't be asked to skip the chapters because it might drop you in the wrong place. I'm certainly not fast forwarding. Yes, it's 5 minutes, but it's part of the charm of the show. You need the narrative framing of this is Emily's shop and it's a shop for lost things and this is where Bagpuss lives, and it's all part of the charm for me anyway. And that is, before we dive too deeply into it, I think that is the best possible word you can use for this show. Is it is just utterly charming. There is just something about Bagpuss that just every time I watch it just captivates me and brings me in. it's utterly charming, and I think I've spent a long time watching it this time, and this I've mentioned this briefly on the show before, but I did write papers on children's TV of the 70s and 80s whilst I was doing my BA, and this was a show that I specifically targeted. I've written many a word about Bagpuss, so I have thought about this quite a lot, and where the appeal lies, and I did so again this time. And every time I keep coming back to the same thing. And for me, I mean, there's some specific things that appeal to me in Bagpuss, but I think the overall general appeal, and the reason why it's actually been voted the most popular children's television program of all time in the UK, is the characters. It's what draws you in, and it's what's so charming about it. You know, they're all so well observed and so individual. And just utterly charming. Like the mice, especially, crack me up every time.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have that baggage with it. I mean, so I was aware of it. I'd seen a couple. I'd never really gave a fuck, to be honest. It was one of those. It just didn't do anything for me. So going back to it this time, it was slightly different because obviously I'm now almost 40, and effectively looking at it for the first time. So yes, I can see the charm, especially the mice and a frog or a toad that sings.
Toad, Gabriel.
Yeah. So again, there was some interesting stuff about that, and obviously reading about the fact they didn't do that stop motion because it would have taken years to do every song, and so they jury rigged a thing so they could actually get a hand in and manipulate it from inside to make it play the guitar properly and stuff. That was all really fascinating. I thought that was really good, but the issue I had with it, and this is entirely my baggage, is that my better half had a pair of slippers that weren't Bagpuss slippers. They didn't have the heads on the toes or anything like that. It was just Bagpuss designed. And every time I saw Bagpuss, I was just thinking, yes, somebody's going to turn you into slippers, you little fucker. And I couldn't get that out of my head.
I mean, there's all sorts of Bagpuss merchandise, and he is at the end of the day just a saggy old cloth cat. So yeah, he could be turned into slippers, I guess. That's a pretty dark place to go with it, Mark.
Yeah, it was just one of those. I don't know. I don't have, similar to when we did Button Moon. I had more association with Button Moon than I do with this. So even though I couldn't remember a great deal about it, there was still enough in there for it to sort of make me go, oh yeah, okay, I sort of remember. I can see that. This one, I say, because I had so little experience. Sorry, I just realised I'm playing with the wire of my headphones, and this probably banging the shit out of the keyboard. So apologies for the noise. Yeah, I don't have the affinity for this. So when I was watching this, I'm watching it as an almost 40-year-old going, yeah, all right, okay, it's all right. And that was kind of it, really. And I think that's a shame, and it's very much my problem.
Yeah, no, that I find quite interesting as well, because I probably have a similar level of baggage with it, in terms of being a child, as you had with Button Moon then. By the time Bagpuss was off the air, I was still very young. I do remember seeing it. It was one of those shows that would be on at a lunchtime. So I do remember seeing it on TV, but I would have been very young. I would have been 4 or 5.
Well, I mean, the initial run was in 74. So
I wasn't even born.
It was pretty much repeated constantly until sort of the mid 80s.
Yeah, sort of. So I remember seeing it when I was very, very young, and then it kind of went away for a little bit, and I sort of picked it up then, round about the late 90s to early 2000s. It just started to pick up traction and become a thing. It's where, all of a sudden these motherfuckers showed up in card shops and toy shops and everything.
Yeah,
and
they were everywhere, weren't they?
There was a huge resurgence. So, and I happened to be writing these papers at the time, so I just dove headfirst into it. So I kind of really got lost in it for the first time as a adult, in inverted commas. And one of the things actually that I've always found especially charming, as I said, and quite special about Bagpuss is that, to me, yes, it's a children's show, and yes, there are short stories for children in there, and there's the sort of folk songs which are a bit nursery rhyming, but to me it plays just as well to an adult audience, I think, as it does to children. It doesn't talk down in the way that a lot of children's shows do. It doesn't patronize kids. It hasn't gone, hey children, how are we doing today? And it doesn't do that. It doesn't sort of rely very heavily on exposition spoken out loud. and some of the humor I think is actually very sophisticated. The mice in particular, but for the kids, they're funny because they're little mice and they've got squeaky voices. But the comedy timing employed on some of the gags with the mice, because they're hyperactive and they're mice, and so they'll be running around trying to fix things, and like I think it's shipping a bottle. One of the first episodes where they're pushing things in and they
jam him in the hole and shit like that.
And then they're all like push, 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 and Madeline goes, no, you got to break it. So they stop, take a beat, and go pull, pull.
And so I watched that when I watched The Elephant.
Okay,
And there was one other one I watched. I can't remember what it was. I think it was.
Did you see the one with Boney King of Nowhere in it? I've got a feeling it might be, I think
that's ringing a bell.
I think it's Owls of Athens. No, I don't think it is Owls of Athens. Or is it?
Yes, it is.
I think it's Owls of Athens.
Yeah, that was it. Yeah, because I watched those two and then I skipped to The Elephant because that sounded fucking weird.
Boney King of Nowhere. To this day, I find hilarious because again, it's almost Carry On level of smut. Where for children, it's a jolly happy song, and for adults, the rhyming couplets always end up as though they're going to say bum or arse or something like that, and then they just stop and use a completely different word. So Boney King of Nowhere cracks me up every time. Not to mention Radiohead went on to cover the fucking thing. That's how big Boney King of Nowhere got.
Yeah, although that's probably another reason why I subconsciously don't like it.
Well, maybe. So there's the humor of it, and like I say, the characters, just every single one of them is so unique. And Bagpuss is so well observed for a cat. The mice they crease me. They are some of my favorite characters.
I really like the woodpecker as well. And it's based on somebody. I can't remember the guy's name, but it's apparently based on somebody, on a sort of quite a prominent academic.
Yeah, and again,
they've just lampooned the living fuck out of him.
Yeah, and he comes through so strongly. But again, like a lesser show, the temptation with Yaffle would have been to have him be quite stuffy and uppity,
and generally you'd have made him an owl, not a woodpecker.
And you would have made him an owl. Yeah, exactly. But he's not. He's actually more like a kindly old grandfather who's just kind of has his own take on the world, and he's so at odds with the rest of the gang, if you like, because they're all dreamers and their imagination takes them on these flights of fancy, and the mice are hyperactive, whereas Yaffle's just like, and he's all like little children kind of thing, let me tell you all about this. I mean, if you've seen The Elephant, that's a prime example of that, where he's trying to tell him it can't be an elephant because he hasn't got ears. And of course the answer is, well, we'll put ears on him then. We'll get a hat and it'll be fine. And
again, it was quite telling as well, because I mean, the whole thing about the stories, and so the thing that they're clearly going for a young audience, but the fact they're going into this immediate flight to fantasy. Well, how does he fly?
Yeah,
I said, oh, hang on, how do you answer that one? If you've got kids, and you're watching, you've got little kids, and they haven't seen Dumbo, and they're going to turn to you and say, "Do elephants fly? How do they fly? They're too big to fly." And then you get into the whole thing. So that was quite well observed. And again, the way that's kind of explained through the story, and as you said, the fact, well, you haven't got ears. Well, fuck it, we'll put ears on him. Yeah, it's just such a simple, childish way of doing things.
And that's, I think that is the key to unlocking the whole show, and to, like if it's not for you, it's not for you. But I think the key to actually unlocking the show itself and to taking the level of joy out of it, certainly that I do, is understanding that yes, it was made for children, yes, it was targeted at children, but it doesn't ever talk down to them, and it does understand how they think, and it does actually, especially the stories and some of the songs as well, Boney King and Nowhere being prime example, but especially the stories when they're animated on their own, they are perfectly well executed, self-contained animated shorts. Like they're written, like they all have a start, a middle, and an end. They have a 3-act structure. They aren't fairy tales. Some of them are a bit proverby.
But I think that was kind of the purpose of it, is that they didn't want to be too preachy, but at the same time they're like, well, we kind of need something on it.
Yeah, exactly. But they're so well structured, so well animated, and look, I mean, that's. We'll talk probably in a bit of depth about small films as this podcast goes on, but the level of quality in the animation as well for for what was essentially fucking peanuts.
Yeah.
You know, they were shooting this thing for something. I think the figure something stupid like about 150 quid an episode,
Yeah.
something like that. Which, all right, this is the 70s, so you know,
it's a bit of cash, but comparatively,
yeah, scale it, you know. But you know, a lot of this animation is literally cardboard cutouts,
yeah,
and a timer on a camera. That's how this works.
Yeah, and that's I mean that's what I was saying about earlier with the with Gabriel, you know, when he's playing the guitar and stuff. That was the only time they had to sort of really think outside the box, and because they couldn't do him playing guitar as stop motion, it would have killed the project.
And even to this day, whenever I go through a rewatch, and this is a show, incidentally, that I do rewatch. Like I would rewatch, like we've just rewatched Game of Thrones. Like I would rewatch Buffy regularly. This is a show that every couple of years,
this would be so much quicker.
I will rewatch it. It's an afternoon. Okay, that's all it is. You set an afternoon aside, sometimes two. I've watched it over the course of about 3 days this week because I've just kind of dipped in and out. But every time I go to that rewatch, the first time Gabriel starts playing guitar, and it's in Ship in a Bottle, he plays guitar in Ship in a Bottle, it blows me away, even to this day. Like the effect that, and again, spoken on all of our shows at length about how much we both love puppetry, and the extent to which they pull that off is incredible, because everybody else to that point has been moving in that kind of stop motion kind of manner, and all of a sudden the fingers are just moving up and down the guitar as if you know, it's real, essentially.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't do a great deal of research anyway, but I hadn't done any before this. I found a couple of episodes to watch, and I was like, okay, that's no, you've actually got it moving up and down the fretboard, and the fingers are moving for. I thought, right, okay, they've done some work there. And when I was reading about it, obviously, the fact that they had to come up with a solution to do that, it really does show. But I want to come back to something you said earlier on about the fact it doesn't talk down to kids, and I think one of the biggest things it does have going for it is that you don't see it so much now in kids shows now, even if they are a similar sort of length. But you got them so in the 70s and the 80s, whereby rather than trying to teach kids something, or rather than trying to sort of say, impart anything, it's just right. Well, this is how kids talk to each other. This is how they tell stories. These are the types of stories they seem to gravitate towards. So let's just tell some fucking stories.
It's exactly that.
And rather than saying, okay, well, we're gonna tell you this story, and at the end of it, you're gonna learn something. Whatever, we're gonna tell you a story, and we're gonna sing you a song about shipping, or about the ship in the bottle, or we're gonna tell you a story about an elephant, because why the fuck not? And that's what kids do to each other.
Yeah, and there are, like I say, some of these stories are a little bit proverbial. Things like the elephant, if you want it, you can take a read in there, particularly when we get onto the ear song after the story in the elephant is finished. If you want it, there's comment there, and there's lesson to be learned about how our outward appearance doesn't reflect who we are. There's the whole song about wouldn't a dolphin look silly with ears, and wouldn't a businessman look silly with big hairy ears, and things like that. So there is comment on outward appearance. You've got episodes like The Wise Man, where it's the whole story is structured as though it's an ancient Chinese proverb. And interestingly, even again there, especially in the 70s and 80s, a lesser show would have relied so heavily on Chinese stereotypes to the point where we would be calling it out and saying it's disgusting. But look, short of putting a little pointy hat on Bagpuss for his thinking cap, like, they're very, very careful, to the point where Yaffle even goes on to say, how cultured and wise Chinese are as a culture, and they're very respectful of that. Owls of Athens, the same thing, they're very respectful of other cultures. And there is just something, there's a level, I think, of professionalism to every element of this that you don't get in so many shows. It's like and this is because it's such a small creative team. This is two fucking guys. All right, that's it. This is two fucking guys in a shed. That's what this is, a cow shed. All right, so it's slightly bigger than your average shed, but this is two guys in a shed making this. They have complete control over it. If you want to read into the history of small films, it is quite interesting. They go on to describe basically how they were arm's length with the BBC because the level of trust that they had in them. They just go and see the BBC once a year, and they go, we need this amount of money, and the BBC would go, here you go, see you in a year's time, bring us a show back, and they would leave them alone. It's almost indie film. It's like, we're gonna fuck around in this shed, you're gonna buy it when we're finished, so we may as well pre-sell you the rights now. And that's what they were doing, which is fucking genius.
Yeah.
especially in the 70s on TV.
Yeah, I mean, you probably would have got that to an extent with probably like Jerry Anderson, who had produced for them
Yes.
before, and had produced something that worked for them. But yeah, I mean, I said this is a tiny little outfit with no oversight whatsoever,
No, I
and
mean
it's
they've
just
got,
like,
they've got previous, because you had things like Ivor the Engine and things
yeah,
like that. So they had previous, which incidentally I do not like at all. I fucking hate Ivor the Engine. It's about the only small film show that I do hate, but it goes through me though. It makes me fucking cringe, and that's a me thing
yeah,
because I'm Welsh.
yeah.
Okay.
It's that and Fireman Sam have the same effect on me.
Yes, exactly. They just go fucking straight through me. It makes every fucking hair on my body stand on end.
Yeah,
Which is interesting considering how I've just talked about how careful they are to respect other cultures. And to be fair, in Ivor the Engine, most of the fun that's poked at the Welsh is quite gentle, and it's
Hmm.
not horribly stereotypical. It's just that Indian sounding accent.
I was
But
going to
anyway,
say
this
a
isn't an
lot.
Ivor the Engine
As
show.
I say, in general, when you get it and you get it across shows from the 70s, 80s, and 90s, where it was cheaper to bring somebody in and do a really comic Welsh accent than to actually get somebody to come across the bridge and do the work properly.
Yeah,
So you always got the big accent and the really big fucking bellowing voice.
yeah, and
Who
it's
the fuck
awful.
talk? Actually, I do know somebody who talks. Well, I did. He's dead now. But a guy I used to work with when I was a lot younger. He was from like deepest, darkest West Wales, and he actually fucking talked like a farmer in it, like Windsor Davis. I said, well, that's the only time I've ever heard that. Nobody
Yeah,
else.
nobody fucking talks like
Yeah.
that unless we can't hear ourselves. So maybe we do fucking talk like that.
Well,
I don't
maybe.
know.
Although
Pretty sure I
I
don't.
normally get accused of being Canadian, so
I weirdly normally get accused of being Geordie when I grow up. Or I don't know. I don't know where that comes from, because I certainly don't sound like that. Not
Yeah.
that there's anything wrong with that, but I know I
It's
fucking
yeah.
don't.
No, I remember being in America and somebody asked me where my accent was. I said, oh, it's Welsh, and they said, what part of Texas is that in?
We love you, American listeners.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. It was hilarious. That was the best laugh I had all week.
I mean that in itself, you hit on something interesting there as well, because something I noticed on this watch through. I have this on DVD, so it is available on the internet.
Yeah.
Please pay for it as always. I know it's all on YouTube. I know it's all there for free because the love for this show is massive. So people have dumped it out there, which ironically is hurting the estate. And
Yeah.
it is the estate at this point, obviously. But you can get it. I have it on DVD, and weirdly, this must be a rights thing. I don't know. I haven't looked into this, and this will be post any research that I would have done last time. My DVD starts with the fucking Universal Pictures logo. Full on
Yeah.
globe spinning, Universal going around it. So maybe
Yeah.
this
So
was distributed in America. I don't
it
know.
was. So in '93, Polygram released it on video. So they bought it and then got bought up by Universal.
Right. So that's how my DVD ends up having the Universal globe on it.
Yeah.
Interesting. That struck me this time. I don't know why it's never stuck in my teeth before, but I was like, fucking hell, this is a Universal joint.
Yeah.
What the fuck's going on
so
here?
yeah, the first video was released by Channel 5 and the rest released by Universal Pictures. So yeah.
Okay. Because clearly two titans of industry there. Universal, Channel 5.
Hey, you've got to get softcore porn from somewhere.
I guess so.
I was saying that. I mean, I don't even know if they do that anymore. It's been that long since I've watched Channel 5. The only thing I know they still have on is Neighbours.
And they have Big Brother now, don't they?
Is that still going?
I think Channel 5 has Big Brother.
Oh,
I
fuck
think.
no.
I don't know.
That
Anyway,
sound is the bottom of the barrel being scraped.
yeah.
Incidentally,
Anyway,
before we move on from that, there's also a CD of the original songs, which was released in 2018.
yeah, it's on vinyl as well, and
Yeah.
it is something I've had my eye on for a little while. I've never got around to taking the plunge, but I have had my eye on that for a little while. Boney King of Nowhere is worth it alone.
Well, I wonder
So
if they did it, if they released it in 2018, I'd imagine it's got to be on digital platforms as well, hasn't it?
probably is. I'm sure I can get it on Spotify. I know I can certainly listen to Boney King or wherever I fucking want because it's floating around on YouTube and stuff as well. Hell, I can put the fucking DVD in, like, so I can skip straight to the chapter. But it's the kind of thing that would be nice, especially that intro would just sound lovely coming through my old record player downstairs. I think it would sound really, really nice. How old do I fucking sound? Jesus Christ.
I wasn't going to say.
No, that's middle age, everybody. What was I talking about before we went off on Universal Studios? I was talking about small films.
Yeah.
So yeah, in general, I think again a lot of, because this was so tightly creatively controlled. We've talked particularly on Mario about how sometimes when a creator's allowed free reign, they could, a project can grow arms and legs and it can just be hideously out of control. And this is never that at any point. It's so concise. Everything about like the wraparound in the shop is always so concise. We get from A to B very quickly. It never feels shoehorned in the way that something like Rainbow would shoehorn a song in. It's never like, hey, children, I know a song about that.
Well, I mean, to be fair, Rainbow was set up for that because you had Roger and Freddie, didn't you?
Yes, yeah. I'm not knocking
it was like,
that, but
it's just like, okay, well, we need a little break because the dude in the George in the bungle suit's getting a bit warm. So here's Roger and Freddie, so you can take his head off for a minute.
Yeah, but I'm not knocking that. That was their format, and that's what you got used to. Button Moon would do the same thing. It'd be, it's time to look through the telescope.
Yeah,
there's never
and that's something that has endured actually. If you look at stuff. I mean, if you look at the 90s, when obviously you had the Teletubbies and then you went to Tweenies, and then when you've gone into stuff in the Night Garden, that is a format they've retained. Where I mean, in the Night Garden was a particular one because there were so many different groups. You could quite naturally say, right, well, it wasn't a case of, and now we're going to see what these lot of fuckers are doing, and now we're going to see what those fuckers are doing. It was just, meanwhile, in fucking Tom Lee Boulane, they're doing this. And Iggle Piggle is sodomizing a German sausage or something like that. It was always that thing where it was just a case of, right, we're going to very obviously jump from one to the next, rather than segue through any sort of story. And it was only when you had the train thing, which I can't fucking remember what it was called. Thankfully, the kids have grown out of it. But the train would pass somebody's house, and then you linger on it for a bit. So then you go into their story, and then Derek Jacobi would say something else, and then you go off to somebody else. I mean, they have retained that format to an extent, but I don't think it ever particularly worked, but it certainly doesn't work now because everybody's kind of looking for it. And I think that looking back at Bagpuss, and so we have talked about other shows, in the past, where it's just not something that you do. You kind of just let the story tell itself.
They absolutely do, to the point where, like, with your Button Moons and your Rainbows, and I'm sure you're in your Night Gardens, which, of course, I know about because it was huge, but I've never really watched.
Oh, lucky you.
Yeah, that was very formulaic and always came at the same point in the show. You're right. It was like, we're about to go to commercial break. Now's the time for the song. Bagpuss doesn't work like that. The story or the song, normally there's both, but they come in where it fits the overall story of the episode. So something like The Elephant, for instance, is almost entirely story. It comes in straight away, and we have 2 or 3 chunks of story.
Yeah, and that actually did. It didn't jar with me, but it did because it was just like the second or third one I watched, and it's like, they haven't done this before.
Yeah, that's not the norm, but that's what fitted that story.
Yeah,
and there really is no norm because, like, Ship in the Bottle, there's a lot of discussion about the Ship in the Bottle first. Then we get the song. Then immediately after we get the story, which is just a retelling of the song, and then we close out at the shop. And then others, like Owls of Athens, jumps back and forth. And it's whatever fits at the time. And it really feels like a conversation. And I guess especially for children, it feels like a conversation between adults. For me, it just feels like a conversation between friends or characters. But it feels like they're having a conversation in the shop, genuinely trying to work out what this thing is.
Yeah.
And then those stories and those songs naturally evolve out of that. Well, I think it's this because I remember a time when this happened.
Yeah.
And the only time it even gets slightly formulaic like that is when they have to turn around, and it's just the mechanic that they use to go into the animation. It's when they turn around and say, okay, Bagpuss, you need to put a thinking cap on because you need to think about this. Yeah. And I don't care because I love it every time it happens when they have to throw over to the magical mechanical mouse organ, and it's wonderful. Like the mouse organ is incredible. I love it every time. I love everything to do with the mice. I think there is an age divide in this country, okay, where and I fall right slap bang in the crack in the middle of this. So it's personal choice, I guess, the side that I come down on. But there's definitely an age divide in this country where you can work out what generation a person was brought up in by the song they sing when they're doing DIY.
Okay.
Well, so, I think the latest generations will instantly go to Bob the Builder. They're doing DIY as Bob the Builder, can we fix it? All right. Generation before that, and actually one of the more enduring ones, not so much a song, but there'll be a lot of to me, to you, to me, to you. For me, I cannot attempt to fix anything or do any DIY or even do a household chore. And I am not lying, listeners. This happens at least weekly. I cannot do it without singing The Mice is Round. I cannot do it. I cannot clean the house without singing "We Will Clean It." I cannot pick up a hammer without singing "We Will Fix It." Like, it is just, and again, to me, to you, like, I'm much more likely to be heave, 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 just because that's what has ingrained itself with me.
Yeah.
You know.
Now, when I do any sort of DIY or anything, it's always fuck bollocks. Are you mother?
Oh, I mean, there's that as well. That comes
Yeah.
shortly after. That comes shortly.
Yeah.
But initially, when you think the job's going to be easy and you're quite excited to do it, straight away with me, it's "We will fix it, we will mix," and I will just wander around the house singing to myself in a high pitched voice as well. You can apply that song to just about anything. It's a fun little game, and of course they do that in the show as well. You know, the song is very rarely the same twice, which again, a lot of kids shows will use this formulaic thing, get you to learn the song, get you to sing along. It's part of it, and then they can sell you the record, then they can sell you the fucking books on tape where you want to sing it and see the things going along. But no, the mice sing a different round in almost every episode. Some are similar. There's quite a few variations of "We Will Clean It."
I was going to say they're very the ones I've seen are similar.
I mean, the tune is always the same. It's always that kind of medieval English round. But you know, it'll depend on what they're doing. It could be "We will fix it." It could be "We will clean it." It could be "We will shine it." It could be anything, you know. And the same with the Marvelous Mechanical Mouse Organ as well. You know, it'll be some weeks they're just doing the pictures and Gabriel's playing the song. Some weeks they've got the music sheet and they've got to put that in. And, you know, Charlie Mouse has got to wind it up and put it in. It's always slightly different. And again, it's whatever fits the story.
Yeah.
No, they're not afraid to just, there's something new every week. I think that's one of the things that makes it so easy to watch as well. No two episodes are the same, not tonally, you know, not in terms of even what you're going to get. Sometimes even the style of animation and the art style is totally different when you get these things. Like I mentioned, The Wise Man, you know, where it's drawn like one of those old kind of willow tree plates, you know, like old Chinese drawings. And then other times it's very clearly cardboard cutouts. I mean, I'm trying to think what episodes you watched again. Did you get the song with the mice chasing the cheese, where they're after the blue cheese?
No, I don't think so.
And that's just a very bright, pastel-y coloured animation that was quite typical of the late 70s and early 80s.
Yeah, it's
you know?
not ringing a bell. But I mean, I think you're right. I think that is part of the charm. That is part of the charm, is the fact you are, you know, so many shows, and they still do it now. And they, I mean, going back to like Jerry Anderson, it was always a thing of repeat, and Hanna-Barbera, you repeat as much as you can, because then it's cheaper to make, and we can churn out more episodes. We haven't got to animate so many cells or make so many puppets or do this, that, and the other. So the fact that they're saying, right, okay, well, every episode's going to be different because everything it's about a different thing. So we're going to treat it as its own thing. We're going to treat it as a small film, effectively. And to that extent, then, apart from the intro and the outro, which, yes, okay, after the first time, you're like, fucking hell, right, okay, get on with it. You kind of watch the episode and go, right, okay, that's engaging because I'm not seeing the same thing. And I said the one with the elephant, I said it's predominantly story, and they launch straight into the animation with it, with the cartoon animation with it as well. And oh, right, okay, that's different. And so immediately you're not quite on the back foot because it's not so disarming in any way. But you're just like, oh, right, okay, that's what I'm getting this week. And like I said, I mean, my baggage with it is the fact that I'm almost 40 watching it for the first time, more or less. So
just put that aside. Just be a kid. Just allow yourself to be a kid and watch it, and accept that actually, and I mean every fucking word of this, actually it's better written and produced even to this day than most of the shit you're going to watch that's targeted at our age group. I can guarantee you. It tells a fucking better story than any episode of Game of Thrones you want to make me watch. I'll tell you that.
That's not fucking hard. I've taken shit to tell better stories than Game of Thrones.
You know, in 10 minutes, it'll tell you a complete story, sometimes two. And they're simple. They're very simple. But they work.
There's nothing to say a story has to be complex, is there?
And some of them are genuinely lovely. Like The Hamish is genuinely a lovely story.
Which one is that? Because I've been reading about them. I can't remember which one that is.
So the Hamish is where they get a porcupine pin cushion in the shop. Spoilers, listeners, spoilers. And initially, Yaffle thinks it's a Hamish, which is a small Scottish wee beastie type thing. Which is essentially like a living bagpipe, sort of a cross between like I'm sure you've joked about it as well, like joking about going out and catching a wild haggis. It's essentially that, it's like a small little tartan sack with a squeaky snouty nose that makes a noise like a bagpipe. And then this guy on top.
I think I went out with her.
There's a guy who lives on top of a mountain or a hill in a secluded area of Scotland, and he has a long lost brother. And every night he goes out and he plays his bagpipes in the hope that his long lost brother will play the bagpipes back, and they'll find each other. But everybody in the village hated the sound of the bagpipes, so he had to move away to this remote mountain, and now he's really lonely. And then one night he's out there playing his bagpipes, and he hears the bagpipe call coming back, and it's pitch dark outside because it's the middle of the night and he's in the middle of nowhere. So he's blowing his bagpipe, and the Hamish is blowing back at him, and the Hamish has lost his own tribe, so he thinks that that the guy is one of the Hamishes, and the guy thinks the Hamish is his brother. So he takes him inside, and they sit by the fire, and then they spend many, many years living happily together until the rest of the Hamish clan come back. Spoilers, to take the wee Hamish away, and then the man's all on his own again. And it's just this lovely, touching little story. And I've done it no justice by telling it in such a short space of time, but it's this lovely, touching little story. And like generally, it's almost the type of thing you could see like Pixar picking up and running for 80 minutes. You know, and it's condensed into this tiny couple of minutes in this show.
I mean, to be honest, if you look at the shorts that Pixar are putting out, so with the features at the moment, it does. So, no, you could always imagine it having that feel to it,
and it's got that level of just emotion in it for me. Like it conveys so much emotion. The Hamish itself is a cute little thing, you know, and one of the other things that's great about it in terms of its narrative as well. We're talking about how the outro was always the same. And you'll quite frequently, because the Hamish is then such an obvious thing to look at because it's tartan. It's one of the first things you'll notice when you do get to the outros. The thing that is slightly different is every week when they push the new thing into the shop window, all of the old things are still there and they get rearranged and stuff like that. And so I always like to play a little game of spot the Hamish when you get to the end, because he's normally in there somewhere, but they move them around.
Yeah. And I mean, now, if you had that now, it would be a case of, right, well, that's our outro, and we're going to put this week's thing in front and center, and nothing else will be there from previous weeks.
Yeah. There's an element of ongoing narrative there that suggests there's a world.
Yeah, and I mean, realistically, you'd think, okay, well, if we're making this many episodes, yes, okay, if we want to feature the thing that's been in this episode in the window, then why are we gonna strip it out every week and reset it? So we're just putting this one new thing. Just chuck it fucking in the shot. We'll just rearrange what's already there. And next week, when we've got, I don't know, it might be a penny next week, or it might be a toy penguin, or whatever, we'll put that more prominently, and we'll just move stuff around, because and it fits the narrative as well. Actually, this is a shop for lost and broken things, and they're not going to be picked up anytime soon, so they're still there, and that kind of makes sense as well.
Yeah, and I don't know, but I would imagine there is a definite practical element to that, where they're shooting on such a low budget and everything is so fucking sticky tape and felt tips that actually
leave it alone.
They've set that camera up in the shop window and done all of those outros at once, and the camera's just running, and they're like, right, now move that one there, put that one in there, because they would have been, once you've got that set done and the camera's ready, go, don't fucking move it.
Yeah, nobody fucking breathe.
Yeah, exactly, and especially with stop motion animation as well.
Yeah,
because again, the master shot. If you look at it, the master shot of Bagpuss over on the far right, and Yaffle's come down off his bookcase, and he'll be sort of 2/3 of the way along in the top left, and then the mice will just pop in and out. Yeah. But you get the idea that probably Bagpuss and Yaffle are sort of set up there and left there, because even again, part of the reason for having the same intro. Yaffle only ever got down off that bookshelf once, I guarantee you. They they didn't film that time and time again. He was always there. Whereas the mice have to constantly run around and pop in and out. But they're the easiest things to animate because they're literally little paper cones.
Yeah, exactly.
They wave their arms around, basically. That's about all they do.
Nothing really moves with them, is it? No, it's not. You're not doing legs and you're not moving heads and stuff.
And yet there is so much energy and character that comes through with them just by them spinning around on the floor. And I mean, they're excited toddlers, basically, is what they are, aren't they? Yeah. And I love them to bits.
And it's quite interesting. I hadn't really thought about it, even when I was watching it this afternoon, and sort of compare it to In the Night Garden. You look at some of the characters they've got in there, and they've done the exact same thing. They've got two little families, and they've got like 9 billion kids each, because why the fuck not? But they are exactly like the mice. They're just these balls of energy. And they're constantly moving around, and they're constantly jabbering, and you have no fucking idea what's going on until they want you to know what's going on in the story. And that's the point where the narrator comes in, and I think that's where they've kind of blown it a little bit. They don't they don't let the story be the story. You know, they've got to have somebody telling it, which is fine, but it kind of steps on what they're trying to do with the animation. And I think that there's so many things, and I didn't know enough about this to really have any sort of frame of reference. But so many of the kids shows that certainly number one would have watched when she was little. I can't really speak for number two because he wasn't here, but a lot of the stuff that she would gravitate towards had that sort of style to it as well. And these sort of characters were very, very similar to what you got 35, 40 years before.
Yeah, I think again the big difference there is as you say, with that they'll just run around and jabber until it's time for you to know what it is, and then you might get an exposition bomb from the narrator.
Yeah.
Whereas again here, the mice just are naturally doing what they're going to do, and it just so happens they might, in an entirely innocent way, seemingly, although of course it's leading for the story, ask a question like, oh well, why doesn't the elephant have ears? Or we can sort that out. I'm sure we've got a hat or something like that, and it just feels again like a natural evolution of the conversation that's being had, rather than going, what's that, mice? You think he needs a hat? Oh well, I'm sure we have one here somewhere. There's none of that.
Yeah, and that was something that I'm trying to think, because obviously wasn't around certainly when this did it runs in the first time, but even when it first went off air in '86, I wouldn't have been that old. But I'm trying to remember shows of a similar sort of age that don't rely on that mechanic, because that was it was tried and tested even then. It's tropey as all fuck.
I can say, as somebody that's watched a lot of them, as I say, academically as well, there are none that execute it as well as this. There are none that treat their audience with as much respect.
Well,
as
this. I can't even remember anything that tries to do it. It was always very much the narrator going, as you said, what's that? Oh, you think he needs a hat? And even to so when it evolved into things like Sooty, where you had Corbett was on screen, so he acted as that narrator for you, and he that role was fulfilled that way. Even then, you had to have somebody explaining what the fuck was going on.
Yeah,
and some did it to a better degree of success and subtlety than others. But I'm racking my brain trying to think of anything else that didn't do that had a similar sort of format, similar sort of style, and similar sort of format. Obviously, once you got into your bigger shows, then obviously they did it because they had a longer form and they were able to push it a bit. But there's nothing like this that really did it in the same way that I can think of.
The closest this ever gets to that is on occasion, and Shipping a Bottle is a particularly bad offender for this as an episode, but it's also the first one.
Yeah.
So maybe they kind of learned afterwards. There are occasions where Charlie Mouse is treated like a bit of a fucking imbecile. And they have to set out like, no, Charlie Mouse, do it like this, or stop doing that, Charlie Mouse, or what. But it's very few and far between does that happen. And again, it almost feels like, oh well, they're telling him because he's a fucking bellend, not because.
But thinking of that one and the example you used earlier on, where it was like, they were talking about the ship being in the bottle. Well, how's it get in there? Oh, we can get in there, and they said shove him in, and you Yaffle, isn't it?
Yeah.
He said, no, don't do that because no, sorry, it's the doll, fucking
Madeline.
She's like, no, don't do that, you'll break it. And it's the sort of thing that if that was happening in your living room, not with fucking mice and toys and everything, but you have a child doing the same thing. Don't do that, you'll fucking break it.
Yeah.
And it's not so much so ragging on your audience going, oh, we can't do that because of this, as we get in the other shows. It's talking to the way you would talk to a child is, don't do that, you're going to break it. Do it like this instead. And then so their response to that is, oh, right, okay, so. And then you get them pulling him back out with the bottle and stuff like that. So I didn't even think with that episode and that example, I don't even think they got that particularly wrong. It was just it seemed quite organic, and I say that. Mine are older, but I say that 10, 15 times a day. Don't do that, you're going to break it. Don't do that, you're going to break it. Fuck off out of the way, let me do it. And then
you break it,
and then I break it, but that's fine because I paid for it. But yes, it's that sort of thing where you think, no, I can hear myself, I can hear Tori, I can hear every parent I know going, don't do that way, you're going to break it. Don't do that. No, try it this way instead. And it has that sort of feel to it, rather than it being, no, viewers, he can't do that because if he does that, he's going to break it.
Yeah, it hasn't got that patronizing.
Yeah, it seems, as you said, it seems very conversational, very organic.
Yeah, it's not got that kind of omniscient,
No.
overlord narrator. You know, I mean, interesting. Emily, for instance, you never see Emily. She's
No, and
just
that was
this.
one thing I did think was quite puzzling. You wouldn't see it now that Emily would be a fully fledged character and
But then
involved
she
in
would
everything.
be talking down to them
Yeah.
in the way that this narrator would. And I think Emily as a character is actually much stronger for just being in the opening and closing. You know, you get all you need from Emily in those photographs. You understand who
Yeah.
she is. You understand that she's playing at having this shop. The reason they're all broken and lost things and she doesn't sell anything is because she's a fucking little girl. Of course she
Yeah.
doesn't have a shop. And Bagpuss is a fucking stuffed toy. Of
Yeah.
course he doesn't come to life. This is Emily playing shop,
Yeah.
basically. You
Yeah.
know,
She,
and
she's and
it's
she's got her favorite toys that she's putting into her shop.
yes, exactly. So we don't need to see her, and I think if we do see
Yeah.
her, it cheapens her. Plus the fact, of course, it makes it much more difficult to animate because then you've got an actual person in there.
Yeah, and massive size differences and all the rest of it.
Exactly, yeah. Although Bagpuss as a puppet is fucking huge.
Yeah.
I have seen him. He's not small.
Yeah, because didn't they put the original and oh fuck, was it Rupert? They put him into a
Yeah,
museum in Cambridge, didn't they?
yeah, that's right. But you can see him in the photographs in the opening as well. You can see him
Yeah.
compared to Emily. Like he's
Yes.
fucking huge.
Yeah.
Even the one I've got there is not small, you know, and
Yeah.
that's
You
nowhere
can tell
near to
that.
scale. But yeah, he's a big fat old cat. He's an old fat tabby cat. And you know, again, it's just the observation of the characters there. As somebody who's got 4 fucking cats, and one of them is fucking fat. That's how they are. They will sleep all fucking day until you prod them with something interesting. And then for about 5 minutes, they'll be really fucking super interested. And then they'll be like,
Yeah,
nah,
fuck it.
I'm
Too
going
much, too
back to
much like
fucking
hard
sleep
work.
now. Yeah, fuck this. You know, so again, really well observed. And as you say, Yaffle, I mean, Yaffle's a character that has stuck with me throughout my entire life. That Yaffle is my go-to. Like if I'm reaching for an academic, if I need to do an academic impersonation, Yaffle is where I go straight away. It's nah, 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 nah. Yeah, and you just get the character straight away,
Hmm.
immediately. But yeah, the temptation would have been to be like, you know, an Archimedes style owl or something like that. But he's
Yeah.
not that. He's more this kind of distinguished old gentleman and a kindly grandfather figure. And he could have so easily been something. Even Madeline, like she could so easily have been this horrible matriarch who spoils all the fun and,
Yeah.
you know, is very matronly. And she's not at all.
Hmm.
You know, she's just slightly more genteel than everybody else and a little bit more mature. You know, Gabriel, easiest thing to do with him is make him a fucking Rastafarian, isn't it? Come on,
Yeah.
any other show you can name would have made
Absolutely.
him
Yeah.
a fucking Rastafarian. You know they would have.
Yeah.
No, not at all. He's a kindly old traveling folk singer. It's just the level of character that comes through in these, like, essentially 10 minutes worth of film, 130 minutes total is all you get of these guys if you add it all up, and actually less than that because a lot of the time they're telling stories.
Yeah.
It's amazing to me that level of characters come through and endeared itself to fucking generations that grew up with it and generations that didn't and found it later. Like me, as I say, my early memories of it were very fucking early, so I can't say I connected with it early on like I did with Button Moon or anything like that. But as soon as I watched it for the first time, it just resonated with me straight away, and that is just, it's the quality of the fucking writing, the quality of the performances, and the characterization. It's that's what it is. Not to mention how well animated and puppeted it is, which
Hmm.
is flawless for the
Yeah.
time. I mean, you have to bear in mind, you know, the tools they were working with, and it was
Yeah.
cheap at the time as well.
Yeah. Exactly.
You know, and it is literally 2 fucking guys in a shed doing everything. Like they did rope a few extra voices in as well. But even most of the voices is Postgate and Furman. That's it.
Yeah.
It's just 2 guys fucking around, and they managed to spin this entire creative industry out of it. It's wonderful. It's such a, everything around it is just so magical, you know, just this whole creative environment that they had, that they managed to spin this whole career where they had a bunch of shows all with just a handful of episodes.
Hmm.
You know, you've got Noggin the Nog, you've got Ivor the Engine, Bagpuss, Clangers, all of it, and all just being cobbled together by 2 blokes in a fucking shed. And that's, I think that's how you get this level of attention to detail and commitment, because there's nobody looking over their shoulder going, hang on, we've got toys to sell,
And
wait a
they're not,
minute.
and there aren't too many people going, "Oh yeah, I wouldn't do that."
Yeah,
No, I think it needs to be that. I think you need to do this instead. No, they've got they clearly know what they're doing. They clearly know their product. They clearly know their characters. And it's like, well, yeah, that's fine. Which you're doing that one, so you carry on. You know what you're doing. I'm not going to micromanage it. And it just seems to be like, okay, well, anybody they've got in, it's been a case of like, you come in and you can do what we need you to do, or you can fuck off. There's not that sort of level of interference, if you like, from third parties, and that could be from the BBC, or it could be from any sort of production unit, or from anybody even later on going, right, well, we want to syndicate this, but we want to sell it elsewhere, but you need to do A, B, C, X, Y, Z. You don't have any of that. It's just, look, this is the show we want to make. We're going to fucking make it, and beyond that, that's as far as we want to know.
And that's, this is a Bagpuss podcast, obviously, but just to go slightly off topic here, that is the only way you get to the sheer fucking lunacy, the absolute insanity that is the clangers, is for just leave these guys alone and let them do what they want. They walked in with their elevator pitch to the BBC and they go, oh yeah, well, the mice from Bagpuss, and they go, yeah, everybody loves the mice, they'll say, I'll do a show about the mice. Okay, we're going to put them in space, and they don't talk English, and there's a soup dragon. Like, what? Excuse me? Like, it's insane. And you don't get that. Like you say, network interference on that would have been horrendous. Like the soup, what now? Yeah. Why is he a dragon? Why are they on the moon? Why is it made of cheese? Why don't they speak English? Sorry, what's going on?
What are they doing?
Yeah. Like, and yet you look back on it now, it is one of the most beloved shows of all time, and one I'm sure we'll come to do on this podcast. It is
that'll be fun.
Fucking insane. Absolute insanity, that show. And there's no way you do it with any level of studio interference. And,
no, absolutely not.
But again, it's at the quality, and this is just a totally different thing. This is much more serene, much calmer. This is another one of those, I talked about it with Rent-A-Ghost as well. This is one of those kind of happy place shows where you can just go, you know what, like, it's been a shitty week. I just want, like, I'm going to have a nice cup of coffee. I'm going to put this DVD in, and I'm just going to watch Bagpuss for a couple of hours, and it will be fine. Everything will be right with the world, and I'll be calm. It's got that effect. It's just lovely. It's a lovely, lovely show. Not to mention, it makes, like I said, the mice make me laugh every fucking time. I find them hilarious. Absolutely, because they're little arseholes, and that's funny. Yeah. That is funny to me. It's why I have actual cats, because they are little arseholes, and that's funny. So yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty obvious that I absolutely adore this show. I can't think of anything bad to say about it. I don't think not a single episode. And I've watched the whole thing again, as I said, over the course of 3 days, and okay, there's only 13 of them, but not a single episode feels like a chore. Some are better than others, don't get me wrong. Some are absolutely superb, and some are not as good as the rest of them, but they're all quality, and not a single episode feels like a chore. It never feels like it drags. It's never like, oh my God, I've got to watch another one of these, which we've had with some of these shows. Yeah. And this isn't that at all. And it's Jesus, I don't know how many times I've rewatched it. This is like my umpteenth watch through. I don't fucking know. Some of these episodes I practically know by heart. I don't know how many times I've seen it, and I don't think I'll ever get bored of it. It's certainly not the last time I'll see it either.
Yeah, I mean, I came to it for more or less the first time this week, and if I'm honest, because of everything else that's going on at the moment, it was one of those, right, okay, I'll put it on. I watched the first one. Oh, okay, right, fine. Put the second one on. Got fucked off with the intro because, right, okay, that's the same then, and it's like 4 hours long. So there was that, and then by the time I got to the third one, I was like, right, okay, I kind of had enough by that point. And I said that may be because of all the other shit that was going on as I was sat in a waiting room for him to come out of his appointment. So that didn't help because he was in a comfortable chair. Doesn't help that I've not slept in about 3 weeks, so I was sitting there going, I could just close my eyes for a minute, and that may come down to how calming it is and how gentle it is. But for an insomniac to be thinking, "Fuck me, I could go to sleep now," that was a little bit alarming.
I definitely think actually because I was about to say something to you before you said that. Like you watched it in a waiting room, and that's fine. I think you can probably watch it anyway. I've watched some on my phone at the kitchen table rather than on the DVD, just because I happened to have my phone with me at the time and I couldn't be asked to go and turn the DVD on. But it is definitely a show that is best served by, as I say, just settling yourself down, making yourself nice and comfortable, getting yourself a drink, and yeah, just letting it wash over you. And yeah, it's not boredom. It's just, it's a great big warm hug of a show. It's so relaxing and lovely. That yeah, it doesn't surprise me that maybe it did make you feel a bit sleepy. Maybe it just switched your brain off for a bit. I don't know, but
maybe. Well, that doesn't fucking happen often. I know that.
Yeah,
that's why I don't sleep.
Yeah, it is just a lovely, great big warm hug of a show. That is the best way to describe Bagpuss, I think. And as I say, it depends what you find humorous, I suppose. But for me, it's fucking hilarious. The comedy timing on the mice is just wonderful. They're so funny. And just the way they move and everything as well. I love everything about this show. Everything about it. I don't have a single bad thing to say.
Yeah, I will go for our usual barometer. I'll try and introduce my two to it and see how it goes. I'll see how it translates, because
that would be interesting. Yeah,
I'd imagine for number 2, it's not going to be interesting enough. Nothing's going to blow up. Nothing's going to. No, there's no fighting. There's no car chases, and no. But then he's a 6-year-old boy. For number 1, it may take, it may not. I don't know. I'll give it a go, I guess. But I mean, certainly for me, it was one of those that, having now done a bit of it, I may at some point go back to it if I get time, and if depending on what else is going on, I probably won't, to be honest, just because I don't know. As I say, I know we've just knocked off Game of Thrones, but we go through so much content for every show, and no, it's just a finding time to sit down and think, well, okay, I could do this. Excuse me, I could do this for 3 hours. But also, I need to watch that movie for next week, or we need to start we need to start watching that show for 2 weeks' time, and just going, oh, you know what? I'll just keep plowing forward instead, because it's one of those. I mean, there are things I want to watch for pleasure that have been available for a while and I haven't got into, or I've been halfway through and I haven't finished watching seasons. So I'm thinking, I'm not going to start something new when I've got stuff already piled up in backlog, and then all the stuff we do as well. So I mean, it was all right. It was just one of those that, I mean, not having any baggage with it to begin with, it just didn't do a great deal for me. But I can see why, if it's certainly if something you've grown up with, I can see why people would sort of gravitate towards it. And it is healthy, it is fun, it is easy to watch. It's just not really for me at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, I can honestly say I watch it. Yeah, we do watch a lot of stuff, and part of the reason perhaps this didn't feel like a slog is because I enjoy watching this. It is something that I want to watch.
Yeah.
And for me, as I say, that's not because I grew up with it. It's because it struck a chord with me many, many years ago, and I've watched it many times since, because I think it's just perfect storytelling. And that for me is the most important thing in any show, regardless of what genre it is. You know, when we talk about Game of Thrones, like, we've said many, many times, sword and sorcery is not our thing. I'm not a high fantasy kind of guy. But there was some interesting enough storytelling in Game of Thrones that it hooked me. Now it wasn't done particularly well, and that's why I fell out of love with the show, and that's where our whole other fucking podcast came from. But for this, I love it because they're just 13 really good stories, really well told.
Yeah.
And for me, there's nothing more perfect than that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in a couple of writing groups, and one of the things I hear a lot of, I don't really read fantasy, I don't really read crime, but story.
Yes,
it doesn't
absolutely.
matter what your genre is. It doesn't matter what story you're trying to tell. There's a way of telling it, and that's what you need to focus on. So if you are telling a story about swords and dragons and in whatever else, that's fine. If you are telling a police procedural about, that's fine, as long as you do it in a way that moves your story along and makes sense and is coherent and all the rest of it. If you can't do that, then you might as well be writing fucking gibberish.
Yeah.
And claiming you're speaking in tongues, because that's the effect you're going to have. And I think that, I mean, I said, we've said it many times, story is all important, because if your story is shit, the rest of it doesn't matter. It can look amazing, but if your story doesn't work, it's not going to translate to what you get on the screen. And if people can't follow it, even if it does look amazing, people are going to switch off very quickly.
Yeah, that's right. And we talk about this in depth on some of the other shows as well, and we have touched on it with some of the shows we've looked at on SMPD as well. But story is made up of so many different facets. There are so many things. Like narrative, yes, is absolute key. Narrative structure is the most important thing, and it's the one thing that this does absolutely perfectly that I mentioned earlier on. It's the one thing that really connects me. But there's all of the other things that this does right as well, that all go into just making a perfect story. The characterization is right. The characters all act as they should. Nobody acts out of character. And it sounds ridiculous to be having this conversation about a 15-minute preschool show. But that's the level of attention to detail that's been put into this. Visually, we get all the right cues. You know, we understand everything that's going on. It's all clear. The characters all act as they should. The voices all fit the characters. The performance is wonderful. Just everything about it adds up to just this perfect telling of this very simple story every week. And like, you know, I hope at least my genuine love for the Hamish episode came out when I attempted to retell that story, and did a very poor job because I was doing it straight off the top of my head.
Unfortunately, the thing that struck me with it is when you said he was on his own in his dark blowing his bagpipe.
There you go. I mean, yeah, I didn't tell it nearly as well as they do in the show, and that's credit to the show as well as it is disservice to me, I suppose. But when you can elicit that much of an emotional response in literally 3 or 4 minutes with some fucking cardboard cutouts that you're moving around by hand, that's fucking magic. That's special, and that's what this show is to me. Yeah,
and that's why I get that. I say it didn't do it for me, but I get why where it has for you and why other people gravitate towards it. And I remember when Channel 4 did their survey of kids shows, I think it was 99, 2000 when it was sort of millennium time.
Yeah.
I mean, this was, in terms of public vote, this was fucking miles ahead.
Yeah, it's been officially voted the most popular children's TV show of all time, in a BBC poll as well.
Yeah.
In the UK, obviously,
in the UK,
not worldwide. I don't know how well it travelled overseas.
I don't know. I mean, there's not a lot of information about it.
It's very quaint and British, is the thing.
It is very British. I'm trying to see. There's not a huge amount of information about it internationally. So, but then again, if Universal have picked it up, and
that's what I'm thinking.
It may have gone. There's just not really a lot of information about it.
I mean, I kind of hope not, because if it's got overseas, then there's always the hideous potential of a reboot. And I swear to God, if somebody tried to show me a CGI Bagpuss, I'd fucking poke their eyeballs out.
There is, I'm looking at it, it's on the DVDs on bbcshop.com as well, so it's available. And then there's a merch page on Bandcamp as well. So
how much is the DVD now, out of curiosity?
I don't know. Hang on.
I paid about 25 quid for it, but this is going back a long time ago.
The BBC store is now closed.
Oh,
closed in 2017. So yeah, I don't know.
There you go. But I mean, yeah, I paid about 25 quid for it. It's worth every penny of that, to be honest.
Well, the thing is, it's one of those that like you've got the full run of a series there, so you can get away. Even though it is only 3 hours, they can get away with charging that. I mean, if you look at what they were charging for, like, when the Thundercats box sets came out, and they were 5-6 discs, and and they were charging 25-30 quid for one season of that. And you're thinking, hang on, I can get an entire run of this. Okay, it's a different show, and yes, there's maybe less episodes, but actually, I can get that, or I can buy a third of a product, which I'm going to have to go out and spend more money on, and I'm probably not going to be as invested in, because as we talked about when we did Thundercats, yes, okay, Thundercats holds up to an extent, but actually, it's certainly not as brilliant as I fucking remember it. No. And I remember largely being disappointed when I was going through it, thinking, okay, well, there's only X number of episodes, but they're kind of dull. They have bits in them, but there's nothing wholly grabbing about an episode. And I say with these, I said I didn't gravitate towards them. I said probably because of circumstance and everything else, but each episode tells a complete story. So I can chuck one of these on. It doesn't matter. Whereas with something like Thundercats or Transformers, where you say, right, I've got the box set, and I've got to stick on disc after disc after disc just to keep up with it until I get to the end of a season.
Yeah,
and who's got fucking time for that?
Well, exactly. Whereas these, you can watch an episode. Like if you got 5 minutes and you want to relax, you can just be like, do you know what? And 15 minutes realistically.
Yeah.
Do you know what? I'm going to watch an episode of Bagpuss, and you will always have a good time with it. And you will always turn that episode off feeling 100% better than you did when you started it. There is no way this show can possibly make you feel worse. It just doesn't have it in the show. It's
unless you've got some sort of phobia of mice or woodpeckers or big cats
or pink stripy cats. Yeah, who knows? I mean, yeah, I guess if you're afraid of mice and frogs, it could be reasonably traumatic. Or dolls.
But then you wouldn't watch it, would you?
No, you wouldn't go anywhere near. I mean, if you got a doll phobia, I guess Madeline is vaguely terrifying. She's not the friendliest looking of dolls.
Yeah, but no, she's not Chucky, is she?
No, but she has got that kind of ragdoll, kind of faceless, featureless expression.
True.
So I can imagine, and she doesn't move very much because she's kind of flat, and yeah. So I can imagine she's probably the scariest of them.
Yeah, probably.
The rest of them, not so much. I mean, some of the things look vaguely terrifying as well. The elephant.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, that was quite weird.
That looks like it's been hit by a fucking car or something. But in general, you're always going to leave in a better mood than you started when you're watching Bagpuss. And there aren't many shows I can say that about.
No, that's fair. I think that's fair.
So, yeah, I don't have too much else to say. I could literally talk about this all night and tell you how great it is. But I don't have too much else to add other than just to continue singing its praises. And I'm probably going to sound a little bit like a stuck record. If, as I said at the start of the show, if you've never seen it, I can't imagine you've made it this far into the episode, but if you've never seen it, then do yourself a favor. And if you have and you're listening to us because you fondly remember it too, and maybe we've brought some memories back, then absolutely go and track it down. Pay for it if you can. If you can't, it is on YouTube, and you know that's better than nothing. Just pay for it when you get the opportunity to, if that's the case.
Yeah.
But please do go back and watch it, because I promise you there is nothing else like it still. It is just pure magic distilled into 15 minutes of screen time. And there's not many shows you can say that about these days.
No, certainly not many that we found anyway.
No, definitely not many that we've found.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, as always, we'd love to know what people think, what people remember, because I mean, I say I don't have baggage with this. I know a lot of people do. A lot of people will remember this from first or second time around. I know that it was it kind of resurfaced around about 1999 as well. So no, it is out there, and people are gonna have memories of this and fond memories of this. So yeah, let us know what you think. Favorite episodes as well, because they're so fucking surreal. It's just really, I'd be really interested to see what people make of particular episodes, particularly the things like the elephant, which is so fucking random.
There is debate. Like, people do top 10 lists of episodes and stuff as well.
Isn't that fucking redundant when it's only 13?
Yeah, but you know, they will rank episodes, and like some are more popular. As my personal favorite, and it's one that some people say is one of the worst, but my personal favorite is the Hamish, as you can probably tell from my story, you know. But yeah, let us know, listeners. What are your favorite episodes? What's your top 10? Who's your favorite character as well? Because they're all so just wonderful and different. So yeah, and any dirty versions of the Mice is Round that you may have, always welcome.
Yeah, there's bound to be some of those around.
There's plenty.
Yeah, if we can find any, we will stick them in the link for the episode. But yeah, let us know. Get in touch, as always, on Twitter at SMPDpod, on Facebook and YouTube with the Double M Podcast Network. You can go to our website, ddpodcast.net, where you can also get our previous episodes and our other shows. Wherever you get your podcast from, be it iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Play, Amazon Music. Like, share, subscribe, leave some message. We'll get back to you as best we can. Until next time.
See you later.